Every Monday before dawn, a rusted Chevy pickup rattled down the gravel road behind Clara Benson's farmhouse. In the bed, stacked like silver ribs, were dozens of bent aluminum rain gutters. Discarded by roofing crews across 3 counties. Dented by hail, warped by sun, too damaged to drain a roof but too stubborn to crumble. Clara paid the crews in coffee and fresh eggs. Every time someone asked why, she just pointed to the south-facing wall of her barn and said, walls weren't meant to stay empty. Her neighbors called it Clara's junkyard tapestry. If you've ever had an idea so strange that people smiled behind your back, stay with this one. And if you're new here, hit subscribe, because this channel is where the quiet builders finally get heard. Clara Benson was 53 years old, widowed 18 months, standing on 12 acres of rocky Vermont soil that her grandfather had farmed with dairy cows 50 years earlier. The barn still stood, red paint peeling like old sunburn, but the land had gone tired. The soil was thin, acidic, full of stones that surfaced every spring like teeth. Clara had tried row gardening. She had tried raised beds. She had tried everything the extension office recommended. But Vermont's growing season was cruelly short, and her back was not getting younger. What she had, though, was a south-facing barn wall that soaked up sun from March to October, and a stubbornness that her late husband used to call the quiet kind, the kind that doesn't announce itself, it just outlasts you. The gutters came from Eddie Morales. Eddie ran a small roofing company out of Burlington, and every replacement job left him with sections of aluminum too bent to reinstall but too intact to trash without guilt. He dropped the first load at Clara's place because she was on his way home and because she had asked so politely that refusing felt rude. By the 5th load, he was genuinely confused. Clara, he said, unloading another stack onto her driveway, these don't hold water. That's literally their job, and they can't do it. Clara ran her hand along a dented channel and smiled. Eddie, I'm not trying to keep water out. I'm trying to grow food up. That afternoon, she opened a leather-bound journal that had belonged to her husband. On the first blank page, she wrote, vertical. South wall. Strawberries first. Dr. Helen Voss lived 2 miles down the road and had retired from 30 years of teaching horticulture at the state university. She found Clara on a stepladder one Tuesday morning, trying to level a gutter against the barn wall with nothing but a carpenter's level and sheer will. Helen didn't offer to help. She stood in the grass with her hands in her coat pockets and asked, why gutters instead of shelves? Clara thought about it while tightening a bracket. Because shelves need pots. Pots need soil. Soil gets heavy. Gutters are already shaped to hold something shallow and flowing. Helen nodded slowly. And what will flow through them? Clara paused. She hadn't figured that part out yet. That night, she wrote in the journal, water must move. Roots need air. Find the flow. This was how the learning happened. Not in classrooms, but in the space between a question and an answer that hadn't arrived yet. Clara's first gutter fell off the wall in a June thunderstorm. She had used the wrong brackets, fastening them to the barn's siding instead of the studs beneath. She rebuilt it, this time drilling deep into the frame of the building, understanding that the foundation mattered more than the surface. Her first irrigation system was a garden hose with holes punched in it. The water pooled at the low end, drowning the strawberry roots in the first 3 gutters while the top ones dried out completely. She learned about gravity, about slope, about the precise angle that let water move slowly enough to feed but fast enough not to stagnate. She tore it down and rebuilt it with a gentle 1/4-inch drop per 4 feet, measured with a string line and a carpenter's level, checked and rechecked in the journal. Her first strawberry plants were store-bought, root-bound, exhausted before they even arrived. They produced a handful of berries, small and sour, and then gave up. Clara walked the fields around her property instead, found wild strawberry runners growing in the gravel along her driveway, tough and sweet and completely ignored by everyone. She transplanted those runners into a mixture of compost and coconut coir she bought with the last of her savings. The wild plants didn't look impressive. But they knew how to survive. By the second summer, the south wall of Clara's barn had become something the county had never seen before. 12 rows of aluminum gutters, painted soft green to blend with the barn, ran horizontally across the wall like lines on a notebook. Inside each gutter, wild strawberry runners cascaded over the edges. Leaf lettuce filled the lower rows. Herbs, basil, parsley, cilantro filled the middle. At the top, cherry tomatoes hung down like red lanterns against the old red wood. A single rain barrel, fed by the barn's actual gutter system above, dripped water through a network of tubing Clara had assembled from discarded aquarium supplies and irrigation fittings. The water moved through the top gutter, drained into the next, then the next, collecting nutrients as it went, until the bottom gutter emptied into a second barrel that fed a small bed of watercress. She called it the living wall. The neighbors still called it Clara's gutters. Then came the August heat wave. Temperatures hit 97 degrees for 6 straight days. Gardens across the county wilted. Tomato plants drooped. Lettuce bolted and turned bitter. But Clara's wall, protected by the barn's eaves in the hottest part of the afternoon and fed by constant moving water, kept producing. The aluminum gutters, which everyone had said would cook the roots, actually stayed cooler than the ground because the water moving through them never stopped. The strawberries, which everyone had said would never taste good from a gutter, were so sweet that Clara's grandson ate them straight off the vine without washing them. Tom Brennan, who owned the largest vegetable farm in the county and who had once joked at the feed store that Clara was growing aluminum flowers, drove past her barn one September morning and actually stopped his truck. He stood there for 10 minutes, hat in his hands, watching water move through 12 levels of green life without a single pump. "How much soil is in each of those?" he asked finally. Clara flipped open her journal. 3 inches. That's all the roots need if the water brings them what they want. Tom didn't say anything for a while. Then he said, "My greenhouse tomatoes got blight this year. Soil-borne. Nothing I could do. But if the roots aren't in the ground." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Clara started keeping notes for other people. A dairy farmer's wife from 2 towns over wanted to try it on her milking parlor wall. A schoolteacher asked if the system could work indoors for a classroom garden. A nursing home called, wondering if residents could reach the plants more easily if they grew at waist height instead of on the ground. Clara drew diagrams in her husband's old journal, now half filled with water flow calculations and planting schedules and the names of people who had asked her to help them build their own walls. She never called it a business. She called it sharing. But sharing, done carefully and honestly, has a way of becoming something else. 3 years after Eddie Morales dropped the first load of bent gutters in her driveway, Clara stood in front of her barn on a cold April morning, watching steam rise from the rain barrel as the sun warmed the water inside. The strawberries were already flowering. The lettuce was thick and crisp. A family from 3 counties away was on her porch, journal in hand, asking about bracket spacing. Eddie still brought her gutters, but now he separated them by length without being asked, and sometimes he brought his teenage son to help drill the mounting holes. The wall had never been about gutters. It had been about seeing something empty and believing it could hold life. It had been about a woman who refused to let the ground she was given define what she could grow. Sometimes the best soil isn't soil at all. Sometimes it's just the courage to look at what everyone else calls trash and ask, what if this is exactly what I need? We'd love to hear from you. Where are you watching this from tonight? Drop your town or country in the comments. And if you've ever built something beautiful out of what the world threw away, if you've ever proven them wrong just by refusing to stop, tell us your story. We read every single comment.